Hello, welcome back to The Wave. My name is Patrick. As you know, I'm the owner of Subaru Mechanics, and this is our podcast. And across from me here is Dave from Simply Subarus. And we are back to keep talking Subaru. We got lots of topics, lots of things we're trying to get through, and this is going to be a very fun episode. I have very fun topics. We're going to keep it very I would say technically basic, and we're going to try to at least talk a little bit about the Subaru cooling system, but we are going to work our way into some very fun topics. So to kick things off, I wanted to kind of go back to a previous episode where we talked about the Subaru anime that had existed, and it was called Pallades. Well, I did a little digging, and I didn't realize this, something I should have known, is that the Subaru logo is the Pallades star cluster. And the Pallades star cluster, it's called the 6-star group. It's part of the Taurus constellation. And each star represents a piece of Fuji Heavy Industries and basically makes up the whole company of Subaru. So I just didn't realize when I was reading about the anime and how it's about Pallades and the stars, and to me it just seemed very confusing. And then when I found this, it all made sense. It was like, the missing piece. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit because it's pretty interesting. Subaru has a pretty diverse background. I mean, they worked in making warplanes, and they've worked in many other industries. And from all of that, they brought together the 6 companies in Japan and made Fuji Heavy Industries, which turned into Subaru. And it's just a really cool background for the company. So, but now every time I see the logo, I will remember this. I will remember that the anime exists and it's based off of the whole company's logo. So,
well, interestingly enough, a lot of the shops, let's call us the independents, proudly, we're very conscious of copyright infringements. And in part, if anyone were to look closely at our logo, we are very close with 6 stars, but we make sure we orient them a little bit differently.
Yeah, you always got to make them a little different. Well, I just wanted to touch on that because we had mentioned it in the previous podcast, and I just found that info. But moving on from there, our big topic of this episode is going to be cooling systems. Dave and I talked a little bit about it. We wanted to kind of go over it with everyone else. Cooling systems for Subarus are very different. Anywhere from an NA system to a turbo system, you have pieces of a cooling system on a turbo car that continues to cool the turbocharger after the car has turned off. If you have a turbo timer and the car continues to run after the car turns off, anything from the coolant running through the turbo system to make sure it stays cool. There's a lot of different pieces, and so we're going to jump a little bit into that. The first thing I'm going to do is bring up a diagram of the standard NA cooling system. Just wanted to be able to show kind of what we're talking about, and then we can kind of go from there. So now, Dave, I know you wanted to touch on this topic. So what is it about the NA system that is different than a turbo system, and what do people need to know about it if they have an NA Subaru?
So you already hinted to the fact that Subarus, anytime you have a turbocharger, you induce another level of complexity where you have to make sure that that turbocharger is properly cooled. The biggest thing with turbochargers with Subarus that we found is more to do with oil comparative to coolant. And so that's one of the things you kind of mentioned about the turbo timers and making sure that your engine's running for a while after you're running really hard and you're letting it rip. You want to make sure that you're actually able to let the car properly cool itself down and the turbocharger to cool itself down before you just let everything heat soak. And that's a natural physical property where if things just sit, inherently they just get hotter and hotter and hotter without a external force that's taking place on things. And so whether that being coolant circulating, air flowing, things like that, it's another number one reason why commonly people will mention for non-turbo cars, turbo cars, if they shut their car off, take the key out and walk away, they'll still hear their engine cooling fan running. The reason why is it's trying to help bring that engine coolant temperature down. And comparatively with, like, to your original point, with Subarus and turbochargers versus non-turbochargers, you have to make sure that you're properly cooling that turbocharger. And that turbocharger is not just oil lubricated, but it's also oil cooled as well. Like, you have to take into account that oil is also removing heat. It's transferring heat the same way that coolant is. And so by just running your car really hard and shutting it off is actually going to be detrimental to components. And you wouldn't think about these things, but let's say your bearings internally are in your turbocharger. Well, if your turbocharger bearings are sitting there getting heat soaked, they're going to wear out quicker because they're more susceptible to warping, things like that, and hot spotting, things like that. So it's really important that, and not to say everyone needs a turbo timer to say, but if you're going to be running your car really hard, you need to let it sit for a while.
And by letting it sit, you mean like idling?
Yes, letting it run for a while. Usually, give or take, if you're running the car really hard, I would easily say it's safe bet to say, let the car run for 15, 20 minutes before you shut it off. And I know that sounds counterintuitive to leave the engine running, but if you're stopped engine idling, the car's actually going to go through its process of trying to bring down that coolant temperature overall, or the engine temperature. And that's where you have to take into account that when you have a turbocharger, you have one extra component that the average non-turbocharger, engine doesn't, that you have to take account for. And both of those things, including your engine internally, can also be susceptible to these things. And that's where, if you're running even a non-turbo car, I would tell everyone to actually, same kind of thing, not let it, necessarily run it for 20 minutes, but I'd say let it run for five minutes or so, 10 minutes after you are really riding it really hard. And obviously we're out here in the mountains in Colorado, so it's not uncommon for any car, even a non-turbo, to be really working itself going up the mountains.
Now, do any of the newer cars have any features that combat this? Or do they have built-in turbo timers, or is it just a matter of, any car has to be able to run a couple minutes after you turn it off, or, before you turn it off?
Yeah, that's a good question. Inherently, Subaru, and it's not to say Subaru singularly, but across the board, most manufacturers have gotten to the point where there's an industry term thrown around. You'll see this, on the group and other places, but it's called idiot lights. And it's not professing to say that the consumer, the driver, is an idiot. They're idiot lights for a reason, because they don't tell you anything. And that's why we call them that. And so by the fortunate time that with modern cars, you have a engine coolant temperature light that's now red, it's too late, unfortunately. And that's where we've gotten away from the kind of old school of having a coolant gauge that actually showed you a metric, whether or not it showed you an actual number, temperature, degree. It gave you a metric. It shows you before something was to happen. And as we've gotten more and more complacent and everyone just wants to have one warning light come on, or rather every warning light come on, tell them there's a problem with their car, that's kind of where we're at, is the manufacturers are looking at it going, well, unless they see a bunch of warning lights, they're not going to pull over. And that was kind of a segue point to where, or sidebar, where they years ago did a study and they figured out, they tested a bunch of people and said, hey, you see a check engine light on, what do? They said, I keep driving. Well, what do you do if you see all the lights go on? I'm going to go see a mechanic. And so that's where people have gotten to.
Yeah. And, something like what's being depicted here, right? It shows that the thermostat is closed. And so all the coolant passes through the bypass, and essentially the car is now heating up because the thermostat is closed. Now, what happens
and that's an interesting point, to where the modern cars now even have what they call an active grille shutter, and it's an actual set of active electrical shutters that actually open and close in the front of the car to help the car heat up faster, so your car gets heat faster in the winter.
Yeah. It's important to know that, thermostats, when they do go, it usually is a case where it either gets stuck open and your car is actually having trouble getting up to temp because it's constantly cooling, or it gets stuck closed, in which case now you're overheating because the car can't open up the thermostat to cool it. So if you ever run into any issues with your cooling system and you're experiencing either one of those issues, it technically should be the thermostat, but it could be a number of any other problems with the cooling system, depending on, how the water pump's working, or, things like that. So, I'm just going to scroll down to the look here. Now, this is the system that is set up for a turbo car. So what is different about this system? Where does it split off? Is there any extra piping involved? Is there any extra pieces that we need to know about?
Well, particularly across the years, Subaru has developed a couple different iterations of kind of coolant design systems, where they have, if you'll see in the upper left, there's the header tank there. And then, of course, they have on the bottom left there's the coolant expansion tank. That's common for any car, turbo and non-turbo. A very common mention is that people often overfill that coolant expansion tank reservoir. They'll fill it to the max and thinking, the top of the level, think they're good. It's called an expansion tank reservoir for a reason, because as coolant heats up, fluids expand, it needs somewhere to go. And so they put that into the expansion tank, and that's why if you look closely on the side of that expansion tank, there's actually a full, or a high and a low level. And basically what they're indicating is you never want to be outside of that, or filled outside of that range when cold. The point is, when it's hot, it can go higher than that, and that's normal. And that's where we've gotten some concerns from customers calling us going, well, why is my expansion tank, 3/4 the way up? It's because that's what it's doing. It's expanding. But commonly people will overfill that, and when it goes to expand, it overflows, and they think they have unnecessarily a coolant leak when they don't, because they just overfilled that. Beyond that, the biggest thing that you'll see and you'll understand, or I think it's important to understand with the coolant system of a turbo, is like we were just talking about, is making sure that a turbocharger is properly cooled, has a flow of coolant going through it, as well as that brings up another topic where people are commonly talking about the cylinder 4 cooling mod. And directly, if you follow this flow chart, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to basically tap into a coolant point on the back of the cylinder head to tap into your heater core, unless you're going to be running your heat the entire time while you're racing.
Now, if you can, explain to anybody who might not know what the cylinder 4 coolant mod is and what people expect to get out of it if they go through with it. I know it may not be truly effective, but what is the idea behind it?
The idea that is inherently cylinder number 4, let's call it effectively kind of a Pegasus, to where the Subaru industry has always had more problems with cylinder number 4s having problems. And to that point, everyone's always been looking at it going, well, there's something going wrong with cylinder number 4. I mean, even if you look at the standard EJ motor, obviously the F motors have dual knock sensors configuration. At the same time, the EJs have a singular knock sensor, and that's mounted directly over cylinder number 4. Another topic for another day, but people are often looking at feedback knock, learn knock, things like that, and they often don't understand how to interpret that. But long and short, Subaru has, for all of EJ history, been monitoring cylinder number 4. And that's led people to go down the rabbit hole of going, well, there must be a problem with cylinder number 4 effectively. And through end of the problem, or the pipeline, if you will, deduction, people have actually concluded that, well, cylinder number 4 must be a problem cylinder. And there's been some testing, some less than conclusive evidence, let's call it, to supporting that, oh, well, cylinder number 4 has XYZ issues. One of which is a heating issue, to where cylinder number 4 runs effectively hotter than every other cylinder. The point is, by doing a cylinder number 4 cooling mod, you're basically tapping into the back of the cylinder head directly the cooling jacket for cylinder number 4, and you're piping that back in where it's going on the if you follow where the heater matrix is on the right side of the screen there, it's basically tapping right in to the right the bottom side of that heater core matrix. And so you're basically bypassing that heater core in effective sense. That being said, again, it's kind of subjective to comparative to, are you actually doing anything with that heater core as far as like running your actual fans on full hot the whole time? I don't think it's subjective to in our experience. And there's been a number of other let's call them refutable people that have also kind of tested this and have found less than stellar results to think that this is not something that is ultimately beneficial. And at the end of the day, as independents, we always like to think outside the box, but at the same time, we always have to respect what the original engineers have designed. And maybe the internet is not always smarter than the engineers. So cylinder number 4 was always, and this is going to be subjective depending where your car is obviously built, but if we were to be sitting in the car, we're relative to driver or right side, left side, wherever you drive in the country, if we're sitting in the car, the right front of the car is always going to be cylinder number 1. And then cylinder number 2 is going to be across from that on the left side of that. Cylinder number 3 is going to be behind cylinder number 1, and 4 is behind cylinder number 2. So For the United States market, cylinder number 1 is always on the passenger side. Cylinder number 2 is always on the driver's side, and they follow themselves backwards. For the rest of the country or other countries, flip it backwards if you drive on the right side of the road.
So is the cylinder 4 cooling mod, is that a US cylinder 4 or a Japanese cylinder 4?
It's the same. The engine's always been laid out the same way. It just depends on where the driver's seat happens. The engine platform has always been directively the same. So JDM cylinder number 1 is the same exact orientation as a USDM.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, Subaru never ceases to amaze me with the ingenuity of the community and what people come together to figure out, you know, and it's really an interesting path to follow when people find something like a cylinder 4 issue and they all come together and they try to brainstorm how to fix it, and you end up with something like this, which is essentially a mod that people are calling it. And you have people who live and die by it. You have people who don't think it works. And, you know, the community will continue to innovate until there's a conclusion, you know? And I think it's just amazing when things like that happen within this community. And yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. I'm just going to bring up the other diagram that we were looking at as well, unless you wanted me to go down on this one.
No, yeah. The other one's good.
Yeah, let me pull up this other one here. So this is just another diagram we have of a cooling system on a Subaru, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how everything works. I know for anybody listening at home, this is probably not the best segment just because there's a lot of visuals, but you know, if you have a Subaru and you know cooling systems, it shouldn't be that foreign. If you don't know, we'll try to explain it the best we can. For anybody who is looking at the visual, I know there's a lot of arrows pointing everywhere, but that's why we're here, to simplify it. So now on this photo here, you could see that clearly you can kind of follow where the coolant flows through the entire engine bay. Now, what is the yellow piece there?
Actually, that's a good question. I'm pretty confident that's actually the oil cooler, or the oil filter in the yellow. But yeah, the oil cooler is what they're trying to basically show in the diagram. Unfortunately, if anyone's ever looked at a Subaru, or rather any manufacturer's diagram, they're pretty terrible. And that's not to say this is from Subaru, but this is pretty close to what we all have to look at and figure out what parts look like for any manufacturer. That's not to say about Subaru. So when anyone's like, why'd you get the wrong part? Well, let me show you the 2-year-old drawing that I'm looking at that is written in crayon. So that's kind of what we're kind of looking at. But in a nutshell, it's just kind of giving you a little bit more closer in-depth view of kind of how the coolant system operates. Now, obviously, this is not a turbocharged engine, but still, the system flow is still operably the same. And the ideal is that obviously you want to run coolant from the engine through the radiator, cool things off through airflow. And that's another point where I can't remember if we mentioned it or not, but I think it always just goes to show you that even with manufacturer designs, that's always designated for a fully stock configuration. And for a lot of us, we're enthusiasts. And as enthusiasts, we want to modify things. We want to make things do beyond what they were intended to do. And so to that notion, we need to take in mind that we need to be mindful of pitfalls, if you will. And so trying to do everything you can do to increase cooling efficiency is something that's been on the, let's call it the record for every single company or team ever trying to go fast, or do new things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that cooling, right, is one of those pieces of racing that people have been messing with for a long time. I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about was extending the front or the top mount intercooler to a front mount. And when that becomes applicable and at what horsepower and what kind of setup and how that helps the engine actually cool itself, or if adding all that extra piping when you don't have the power is actually hurting the engine because it's not actually getting the cooling it needs because of the time it takes to travel. And, I think that people have been trying to figure out cooling forever. It's always been, how do you keep something that you're trying to push to 8,000 RPMs over and over again on race fuel, and thing is crazy hot. How do you keep it as cool as possible? And I mean, you look at F1, it's still something that they battle with. So
even electric cars, they have water cooling.
Yeah, that too. I think that it's just a very interesting topic because, you and I talked a little bit about when do you switch over to a front mount, and I think that one big thing that we had said was big turbo front mount. It's the second you start rotating turbos and you're making 400, 500, 600 horsepower, the car requires you to get more airflow. And to get that airflow, the hood scoop just isn't going to cut it at some point. It's just not getting enough, at which point you have to start looking at other ways to get airflow.
And it's sitting on top of the engine.
Yeah, that too.
You have all the radiating heat.
You got heat soak. I don't know about you, but as far as like the heat tape goes and people trying to wrap everything in the engine bay, it still can only do so much. I mean, if you have a ton of metal in your engine bay, it's a sealed compartment, everything's hot, you can do whatever you can to try to keep the heat off of it, but at the end of the day, it's still sitting in there.
Absolutely.
That's why a lot of people try to change their cooling systems to outside of the car, or pulling from the front, or they move things around quite a bit. So one thing that we did want to touch on is that our take is, if you're running stock injectors, you should still be on a top mount. You are not making enough power to be running a front mount for cooling. At the end of the day, you're going to end up hurting yourself because the engine is just not making enough power to call for that extended of a setup, and the engines weren't designed for that. If you're going full custom, and now that's a different story. Now it requires custom fitted parts and it requires different cooling and you're tuning for it. But as far as a stock engine and a stock setup, or slightly modified stock, it just is not going to end up being helpful in the end. So, yeah. So, I don't know if there's anything else cooling wise you want to touch on.
No, that's pretty much it. And not to, we always say we never want to discredit anything, but based on our testing and finding that we've seen with customers, the cylinder number 4 cooling mod is yet to be proven.
Yeah, I totally understand, and there's really not a whole ton of data out there proving it. So, until that does become a thing, I think that
if we see Subaru race cars, which we've seen up close in person, several other Pikes Peak cars and things like that, we haven't seen one when the hood's popped have a cylinder number 4 cooling mod.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
saying.
and you know what? That's a good point. I think that that really shows that even Subaru, even though they've maybe experimented with it, they just don't truly believe it's necessary. So,
If it was something they could have designed for 2 decades of the EJ motor, they would have.
yeah, I agree. Well, that leads us into our fun topics of the day. I'm very excited. I can tell you, Dave, I went into the rabbit hole on this. I was doing a ton of research. I found something I did not know existed that Subaru created, and I was so excited. And it led me to just a whole nother world. So we're going to kick it off with, have you ever heard of the 2003 Subaru BS11 Concept?
No. And I know I have some patents behind me here, but
Oh, buckle up, because back in 2003, Subaru wanted to create a luxury brand. They were toying with actually competing with Acura and some of these other Japanese luxury brands. So they came up with the 2003 Subaru B11S Concept. And I will show you right here what this looks like.
oh,
So
actually,
my initial impression of this car is it has a what I would call a Tribeca front end,
yeah.
with almost like it's a Tribeca, but like it almost they're trying to mimic like a Bugatti kind of style, which I'm not a big fan of.
Uh, yeah, I could see that.
You know, it has that shape to it or whatever. But the one thing they were really trying to mimic, what does that look like to you?
Oh,
Think of another
I'm just
Japanese
gonna say
manufacturer.
Porsche.
So I think it does give almost like a Panamera kind of look,
Yeah,
but you know, another
but
Japanese car,
maybe if it was earlier than the Panamera, maybe Panamera got some styling from Subaru.
that actually is an interesting concept. But I want to point your attention to, this is a car that has two very large fender flares with no B pillar and a shortened rear door. Does this not look like an RX-8?
Ooh, okay, I can
So
see
at
it now.
so at the time when this had come out, the RX-8 was I believe in development. And so they were
Uh,
showcasing the RX-8, and so a lot of people made references that this actually looks like the body style of the RX-8. And
mhm.
what I found interesting is the back end of it, to me, almost looks like they
Hmm.
were trying to mimic like earlier BMWs, you know, trying to give it
It
that
almost looks like a
like,
Hyundai Genesis now on the back. A Hyundai
yeah, I
Genesis?
mean, but you got to think about it. This is 2003. The Hyundai Genesis didn't even exist yet. The Tiburon had just been created,
I just
you
think it
know?
kind of has that same back style, although the trunk almost tells me like this is my inner car guy. I'm speaking, like Ford Taurus from a
Yeah,
certain generation in the back end. I don't know.
I could see that. It looks a little
The front, you're
funky.
right though. It almost kind of it looks very close to this actual. If anyone can zoom in the back right here, this patent I have in the back, the front end looks very similar to that. I don't know if this is what they were going for.
You know what? I wonder if I
But
have the
I
patent for
looked. The
this.
patent doesn't actually add up to the one that you actually mentioned, so it's different.
Yeah. Well,
But it's
so
very similar. It has little mirrors and everything.
Yeah. Well, so while I have this up for you, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
just read off for you the specs of this car and a little bit about it. This thing is kind of crazy. So it debuted at the 2003 Geneva Motor Show. It is a bi-turbo 6-cylinder engine with 400 horsepower, all-wheel drive, and a 5-speed automatic transmission. I said bi-turbo H6 engine, 400 horsepower. Um, Now this thing was like totally ahead of its time. For Subaru, they were playing with the H6 engines and trying to figure out what they could do with them, and they decided that if they were going to try to get into more of a luxury brand, they probably needed more horsepower to make it make sense. And then they were looking at the H6, which they had in development, I believe, with the SVX. So they were like, you know what if we bi-turboed it and made it into, something that could compete with BMWs at the time.
Yeah.
And, in true Subaru fashion, it's all-wheel drive. They didn't try to make it rear wheel or anything like that. Um, the back of it is not my favorite, but I mean, this thing was just such a cool concept. I just love that Subaru tried something different, which you don't see them do often. And it's a shame that they never tried to actually produce this, or something like this, because no car ever ends up looking exactly like the concept. But
Never.
but that's the
Sadly.
thing is like, if they would have tried to make this, it would have been competing with other luxury brands, and this could have been the stepping stone into Subaru having a full-on luxury brand themselves.
Who's to say they'll never try to get back into it?
Well, Dave, that is where this entire episode takes a turn, my friend, because just for you,
Whoa.
I have done something very special. I have done loads of research, loads of just hammering out the details on this, and I have created, if Subaru were to have a luxury brand, I have created a lineup of 5 cars with specs for all of them, and I have images of what these cars would look like. And you and I are going to go through, and I want you to rate these 1 to 10. So the first one that we're going to start with is definitely my favorite. Let me put this on the screen for you. Anybody listening at home, I'm going to try to explain this the best I can. This is the first of the lineup. So this car, I wanted to kind of create an entire lineup and a history of what Subaru's, legacy would be, and how this all plays out. So what I came up with is, I wanted a sports car like that would compete with the GTR and the NSX and all that. I wanted an off-road that would compete with the Toyota Land Cruiser and with, the Lexus off-road vehicles. I wanted a electric vehicle that would compete with Tesla and, compete with other electric cars that are luxury. I wanted a hot hatch in case they wanted a luxury car that ended up going to rally. And I wanted a crossover to compete with like the HRV and things like that, but like a fancy one, so like a GLE Mercedes competition. So starting it off.
So wait, is this AI? I have to ask.
So this is AI. I used AI I basically spent hours typing in details and making changes because I wanted so badly for the vision in my head to somewhat materialize so that we could kind of get an idea of what this would look like. So Corey, I don't know how to say this in Japanese, like how it would come out, but um the brand name for Subaru's fancy models, their luxury brand, it would be called Kori, which means ice in Japanese, because their logo would actually be a snowflake that would have 6 points for each star in the Subaru logo. Now, hear me
Okay.
out. I'm getting a little excited because I was so hyped when I figured all this out.
I like it.
um, Now, the first car that we have here is the Kori Hosho. Now, this Hosho means assurance, which is, you know, kind of a jab at Subaru's old confidence and motion slogan. So, it's supposed to just kind of be like a nod to it. Now, this car is a 3.0 turbocharged flat 6 boxer that makes 400 horsepower, close to a car that we just talked about, but rear-wheel drive standard, optional all-wheel drive to kind of give a nod to the BRZ, because I wanted it to have kind of a BRZ look to it, to give it that, like, almost like how the Nissan GTR, right? Like, they took the GTR, which was a street car, and they turned it into a supercar. I wanted this to be the BRZ's upgrade into luxury and speed and all that. So, comes with a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed dual clutch with paddles. And the price range on this would be between, let me double check the price here, between 69,000 to 100,000, depending on the packages and everything that you get. Now, something that I also added was I wanted each car to have JDM heritage features as a package. So I wanted them to have something that Subaru could throw into a package that would be a nod to, the rally history or other cars that Subaru has made. So if you get the JDM heritage package for the Hosho, you would get a digital cluster STI legacy mode with retro graphics inspired by the 90s STI dashes. You would get SVX inspired glass canopy roofline. You would get Recaro X Subaru Heritage bucket seats with STI red stitching. You would get limited 555 World Rally blue paint option. And you would get rally-inspired center differential all-wheel drive option with manual torque split. So, for our first vehicle, 0 to 10, what are you going with?
Man, I'd like to go to the roof, honestly, with this, but I'll give it say a conservative 9. This is good. I think this has a market. I mean, that's speaking personally. I'm also the guy that would humbly, if I could buy any vehicle, it would be an LFA. So
Yeah,
this is kind of in that same kind of category.
Man, I knew I liked you. The LFA is my dream car. So I also upgraded it for what the $100,000 package would look like. It would be a 3.2 liter twin turbo flat 6. It would be a new gen STI derived engine, making 525 horsepower, rear wheel drive, 7-speed dual clutch, 0 to 60 in 3.4, top speed 186. It would come with STI Ghost Mode digital dash with rally style rev animations, and it would also come with gold Brembo brakes, adjustable wing with Group B styling, and it would have the WRC Blue limited edition launch color. It would have active rear steering, ceramic carbon brakes, and active suspension with 5 drive modes: track, rally, GT, comfort, or custom. Yeah,
I'd buy one right now.
dude, that's what I'm saying. I was designing this and I was like, oh my God, I would buy one of these. Like, dude, just look at it. This thing is like, if BRZ,
I don't have the money right now,
like,
but I'd figure it out, like any car enthusiast would.
Dude, if the new age,
you'd find a way to buy it.
It's amazing. And if they're a luxury brand, this is what I would expect. Like, dude, there's no car out there right now that looks like this. It's a BRZ on crack, So moving on to our next one. Dude, you're gonna love this. They just keep getting better. It's amazing.
I should have maybe I went too high giving this a 9, but we'll see.
All right, the next one is the off-road model, the Corey Yama X. So Yama means mountain in Japanese. So this is your adventure style SUV. It is meant to rival the Lexus GX 550, the Defender from Land Rover, the Cherokee Trailhawk. This is a 2.4 liter turbo boxer 4 plus twin electric motor hybrid. It's 355 horsepower, 380 torque, full-time symmetrical all-wheel drive with electronic dual X mode. Transmission is a 6-speed auto or off-road tuned CVT. And it is priced between $60,000 to $67,000. Now, some features that you can get with this car. If you get the Heritage Features package, it comes with a Baja-inspired roof rails with quick deploy Mole gear storage, digital altimeter and inclinometer cluster. Also comes with WRC off-road skin for infotainment system, and optional retro grille with yellow rally fog lights. So that's the Heritage package. Yeah. The special off-road features are adjustable air suspension. It can lift the car plus 4 inches in lift mode. Dual X mode for rock, sand, deep snow, crawl control. Front and rear locking differentials electronically actuated. 360-degree rock cameras plus undercarriage view, which I love. That's such a cool feature. And then full underbody skid plates, all aluminum, with hill descent control and variable terrain response. Now, I love this thing. When I first saw this picture come up, I was so excited because I wanted something that didn't just look like a Crosstrek or didn't just look like another Subaru off-road vehicle, an Outback, whatever. And it kept trying to give me that. It would, AI is so difficult to get what you want out of it. And so I kept battling with it, and I wanted to get exactly, my vision for what an off-road vehicle would be. And I finally got it. It's you're taking the boxy front end and you're using what is like a boxy off-road car. Subaru doesn't really do boxy that often. They try to curve everything. That's what they've been doing for years. And I feel like this finally gave like that G-Wagon styling to it,
I feel like they're getting more angular as time has gone on. To a point, like even like the grill shapes, and I think this is a great rendering here, and but that's almost very close to kind of where they're getting. like that's almost like a enlarged version of like what an Outback grill is right now. And I think that they're going through this kind of, I guess, phase. And I remember years ago, BMW kind of went through the same kind of thing where they did a bunch of kind of angular triangles and all these things. And it was kind of one of those love-hate things, and people either loved it or they hated it. And I think that's always the subjective part about trying to design anything, is trying to go, do you love it or hate it look-wise? At the end of the day, I think what really sells is features as far as capabilities. So pretty much everything you mentioned, I think, was fantastic. I just have to put an interjection into air ride suspension is absolutely atrocious. It should not be employed off-road. Just go buy a Range Rover if you want to do that.
I think what I like
My
about
2
this
cents.
is, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think you don't want to blow out an air shock in the middle of the desert. I hear you.
Good luck breaking a coil spring. It's pretty hard to do.
Yeah. I think what I like about this is that if you think about the new 4Runners that have come out and the new Land Cruisers and the look of those, they have that rugged off-road. Toyota is so good at doing the 4Runner because it's just such a big, boxy, just off-road monster, and this is something I could see competing with that. I could see this competing with Broncos, even though people are like Bronco crazy right now. I could see this competing with Jeeps, like Subaru would have that boxy off-road, thing that sells Land Rovers. That's why people buy them. They have this look. I think that it's not exactly what I think it should look like, but I think it's close enough that it gives off at least that idea of what that could be. So
I agree. I think the only thing it's missing, and just from what I can see from the renderings, I can't really tell from my vantage point, but I think it needs a little bit more of that Jeep-esque kind of body cladding plastic on the side, which is really easily replaceable and cheap. Because just recently, 2 weekends ago, went on a camping trip, and branches are everywhere. They like to scratch things, so it's nice to have a little bit of extra peripheral edges.
Yeah. I don't blame you. If you're off-roading, you definitely don't want to be scratching metal.
Yeah.
But listen, this is a luxury brand, so this is for the people that want to buy a Land Rover and go to meetings in Manhattan.
This is like, instead of a Land Rover, a Lexus GX. I think this is a good comparison. And it very much kind of reminds me of kind of a crossover between, like, I guess where the Ascent is kind of now, but I guess more Forester-esque.
Yeah,
I kind of see both.
Yeah, I get that. Well, moving right along, the next vehicle we have is the Corey Sora, and this is our electric option. The Corey Sora meaning sky, GTE, is their electric sedan for the everyday driver. It has a dual motor symmetrical electric all-wheel drive system. It's got a 100 kilowatt solid state battery, Subaru Toyota joint platform. I love that AI put that in there. Power output is 540 horsepower, 500 pounds of torque. It can go 375 miles. Performance is 0 to 60 in 3.8. Charging is 350 kilowatts, ultra fast DC charging, 10 to 80% in 20 minutes. Drive modes are Eco, Touring, STI Legacy, whatever that is, and Track. What I love is that this has JDM and heritage features, but it also has luxury tech features. If you get the JDM and Subaru Racing Heritage touches, you can get the Legacy GTT dashboard theme. Digital display mimics classic B4 RSK cluster layout. Selectable.
Ooh.
Oh, get ready. Selectable EV soundtrack. It comes with the STI Boxer synth, throaty flat 4 digital exhaust notes, and then it also comes with Group A turbo whistle rally blow-off valve emulation.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Well, overall, the styling is fantastic. I think it looks great. Spec wise, I think it's right on it hits the nail on the head for where electric. I was going to say electric vehicles, but where electric cars are, because there's a grand scope of electric vehicles.
Yeah, I
but I
think
think that for electric cars, this is it's in line, and I understand that. Well, everyone might, type in the comments. This is kind of Tesla looking. I think everyone has to kind of fall in line to that same kind of two things. One of which is aerodynamics. Second, which is styling. What's selling right now?
Yeah,
it's hard to, if everyone's buying Coke and Pepsi, come out with a Fanta, and make it popular. I'm not saying you can't, but just it's harder.
Yeah, I think, you know what, it's close enough to the competition that it's electric, you know what you're getting, but it's also different enough that like you would know if enough of these are on the road that this is a Subaru. It would, the headlights are different. I feel like the body is different. It would just stand out a little bit more.
It's weird. The front end almost says BRZ, almost. The middle says Corolla. I don't know what exactly the back looks like, but it's just probably more like Tesla. It looks like, from the contours. Yeah. So it's probably like, BRZ, Corolla, Tesla. But it's still unique, and I think you're right. People would recognize it.
You don't understand. Everyone would recognize it because it's making boxer noises with Group A turbo whistle noises. So
yes,
people will hear you rolling up in this thing, and it's making literal rally car blow off valve noises with boxer sounds. So okay, hang on. So it comes with WRC-inspired all-wheel drive torque vectoring system, heritage color options, 1990s dark amethyst pearl, WRC World Rally blue, or crystal white with red pinstripe STI heritage pack.
Ooh.
Now, luxury and interior features fully digital glass cockpit with a HUD, 15-inch main display, 12-inch cluster, Napa leather with laser-cut cherry blossom inlays, semi-autonomous eyesight level 4, Subaru's most advanced, whatever, ambient lighting modes, Shinjuku. Ambient lighting modes are Shinjuku, Rally Stage, or Cherry Blossom. 21 speaker Harman Kardon 3D audio with rally car acoustic presets, and rear captain seats with zero gravity recline and massage. Comes with massage seats in the back.
That's the most AI thing ever, because they realized they went through the algorithm. They're like, yeah, Subaru has a deal with Harman Kardon, so.
Yeah, so they're like 21 speakers in the car.
All Harman Kardon, which is not knocking them. I don't want to make this a knock on them. They make great audio.
They want to make sure that you can pump your boxer noises and your blow-off valve noises through all 21 speakers at full blast. Go down the highway.
No, I think this actually hits though. This could be good, and I'm old school. Maybe I'm not akin to hearing engine noise through a speaker, but I guess the closest I can akin it to was I bought an electric go-kart a couple years ago from Segway. that had a speaker that was Bluetooth and connected to the go-kart. And you could select one of 12 engine noises. And it was a lot of fun.
Well,
Getting customers in that, and hey, while you're waiting on your car getting worked on, you want to ride this around the parking lot. And yeah, it was fully electric, and it didn't make any noise at all other than the speaker, but it was really funny because you could tune it to make an F1 noise if you wanted to.
Well, funny story for you. I knew someone, still know someone who works at Shelby America in Vegas. So when I was in Vegas, I got to be taken on a private tour of the facility, and I got to walk around and see all the cars. I got to see Carroll Shelby's car that he made. I believe it's called the GT1. Interesting fact about the GT1, in his will when he died, anybody who owns one is guaranteed free oil changes and maintenance for life. You never have to do anything to the car. If you ever have a problem with it, Shelby America fixes it for free. It's part of his will. So if you ever buy one, it's like the best investment ever. You never have to do anything to it. But side note, while I was there was a brand new electric Mustang. And the electric Mustang caught me by surprise because it was wrapped in a Borla wrap. And it made me laugh so hard because I was like, is Borla really advertising on an electric car? And that's when he told me that the electric Mustangs have Borla exhaust noises through the speakers. And I just started laughing because I thought it was hilarious.
Okay. I was waiting for the connection there. I was like, wait, how do they justify that?
Yeah. But yeah, so okay, so I have to line you up for this one. This is my brainchild, this next car. This is my favorite one. This is better than the first one I showed you. This is the hot hatch. It is the Subaru RSTI.
10 out of 10.
It's called the Kori Kaze RSTI. I believe it's said like kaze, which means wind in Japanese. Love that. And this car is one of their luxury hot hatches.
Take my money.
It competes with the Golf R, competes with the GR Corolla, and competes with the Audi S3 hatch. It is a 2.0 turbo boxer with the FA20 STI tuned, 305 horsepower, all-wheel drive with driver-controlled center diff. It's got the DCCD back in it, baby. 6-speed manual or 7-speed dual clutch with paddles. Heritage features are, it comes with a intercooler sprayer system, functional hood scoop and roof spoiler, classic gold STI forged wheels available, launch control rev match downshifts, and optional JDM Heritage package with cherry blossom pink badging and seats. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Take my money.
Yeah.
Take my money. Take my money.
So
I'd buy this. I'm glad I gave that. We kind of fell off. I didn't give rankings to the other ones. But this is 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I
would buy this.
I played with this one a lot. It kept trying to make the Impreza hatch, like the newer one, that, it kept trying to do that, and then it was like mixing it with like the 2014 STI hatch, and I just was like, I want something closer
this
to
is good.
I know. I wanted something closer to like a Focus RS size wise, but like mix it with like more luxury and like a little bit of rally, and like this is it. I love it. It's amazing. For anybody listening,
I want to say two things. I love the sea lights. I like that you can't you honestly can't really see the front grille fully because of the shadow, which I like. I'm just gonna say it because if this was ever a thing that hope you're watching, Subaru, and also Toyota. If you could do a kind of Lexus style grille that just took over the whole front of that car,
Yeah, I can see that.
it could be really, really demanding, kind of a presence. Yeah, this is 10 out of 10. I love this.
I was so excited when I came up with this. I was like, I would buy one of these, and the price that AI came up with was 48 to 52,000.
Oh, perfect.
Sold 100%.
And again, depending on specs, I get it. You have your base models. Maybe you have your roll-up windows. Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't know any car that comes with those anymore. But beyond that, I think this is gonna be a really, really good sell. Like this 10 out of 10. Again, I like the gold Brembos in the background. I would buy those.
Yeah.
This looks great. This should. Subaru said the STI was dead, so to speak, but hey, you guys are watching.
But
you guys should.
But the RSCI has just arrived, is what I'm saying.
This looks fantastic. I would 10 out of 10 buy this thing.
I just love it. I was gonna say, for anybody listening at home, it literally looks like a blue Impreza hatch with almost like the 2014 STI, like the big window wing that they had, and then it has red. It says RSTI on the bottom of the driver door. It's got the black wheels that are like 10 spokes or whatever with gold calipers. And it's just got that mean, aggressive, like, front end with the C headlights, and I love it. I like the.
Hey, I'll just say it. If you're listening, we appreciate it, but at the same time, go look us up on YouTube and check it out, and look us up personally, because you have to see this. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we have time for one more, and this is our final one. This is our, I would say, crossover SUV luxury. So this is the Koisuke Touring. Now, this is a car that I would say would pretty much be in competition with like the Infiniti SUVs. It kind of gives that vibe.
Bigger Outback.
It's supposed to. AI says its competitors are the Audi Q3 S line, the BMW X1 M Sport, and the Lexus NX 350, which I could see that. You're not gonna believe what's in this thing, though. It is a 2-liter turbo boxer. It is 280 horsepower. Symmetrical all-wheel drive, CVT with 8-paddle shift program, and the heritage package for this includes digital gauge overlay with Impreza RS Classic style, WRX style exhaust note active in sport mode, roofline spoiler and flared fenders for the Lavorge GT style, and
I like that.
I know, and the Shibuya Gold or gunmetal Sakura paint jobs. Luxury tech includes smart glass roof with dimming, surround sound system tuned by Yamaha Racing Audio. Hilarious. And wireless console game mode with Subaru Rally Game emulator. Sold. It has a racing emulator in the back seat. It's sold.
Yes.
I love it.
I like this thing a lot. You're right. I think it's similar. It's like, it's kind of a hodgepodge, not in a bad way, but about of multiple kind of things they're already doing. You know, it looks good. It looks clean. Honestly, if again, Subaru is watching, this is something they could pretty much build overnight, and people would buy it. I think this is a great looking car.
Yeah. I think
The
like
specs are great.
the passenger door back, if you just look at that, it almost gives me like a Porsche Cayenne kind of vibe.
Yeah,
But
I
then the
agree.
driver door forward almost gives me like an Infiniti Q35 or not Q35, whatever the Infiniti SUVs are.
And that's my point. Like Subarus, and not like Subarus, I should say. All cars are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden you have a Corolla crossover, which
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's a thing, but I'm just giving an example. I think that more and more companies are trying to cater to the market and the user space of everyone trying to get bigger and bigger. For better, for worse, there's something about handling characteristics, and I think that's where we go back to the last car. It was just the pinnacle of we're trying to build something that's performance oriented. We're trying to build something that it can handle, and hey, I'll just say it right now to Subaru if you're listening. Maybe that's the next Gymkhana.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, I am a hot hatch guy. I would buy one in a minute if it was available. It's just like seeing that and knowing that Subaru could make it. It's like, it just hurts a little, because look at how many GR Corollas are selling. Look at how many people want the GR Yaris to come over here. It's like every good thing is taken away. It's so upsetting. But
if Subaru were to contact you tomorrow, would you give them that?
If Subaru contacted me tomorrow
and say, "How we want to build this,"
I would say, on one
Please.
condition, there needs to be a coupe version. I would say I want to see a 2-door.
You're not wrong, but yeah. I don't knock the 4-door. I guess you and me alike. The older we get, the more the 4-door is a little bit more practical.
True.
Even if even in younger pretenses, maybe you want to take more than 2 people with you. You have more than 2 friends. I think this is a practical use case of that.
Yeah, I mean, really, the BRZ is like the first Subaru in a long time that's been like a coupe only. I feel like, the old Imprezas came in a coupe, the 90s ones, but maybe they try going back again. I don't know. But I personally, I like it as a 4-door. I like this design altogether. I think it would be fun. I've always liked, Mazda Speed 3s. The 2011 or 2010 STI wagons, those things were awesome. The hatches, the Focus RS hatches are awesome. I just like, there's such a market for this. I just can't believe that they don't already make more hatches.
Well, maybe it's coming. I mean, between this podcast, hopefully gaining some notoriety, like, follow, share. I don't know if you can put a thing up here. I don't know.
That's all I'm saying.
But at the same time, I think more manufacturers are perpetually following each other to a point. And if they're following trends. If people want something, they're going to buy it. And so we got to vote with our dollars at the end of the day.
Totally agree. Yeah, I to be honest, if that electric car existed and it made Subaru Boxer noises with rally blow-off noises, I might actually buy it because of just how hilarious it would be. I would love that option. So,
I drive 13 miles to work and back. I won't lie. An electric car actually makes sense for me for most of my travel.
yeah, and now you could do it as a rally car, full blast on all 21 speakers with all your windows down, just.
You know me, Pat. I might actually have to add a couple other speakers on the outside, though.
Yeah.
Let everyone know.
Yeah, open up the Pimp My Ride garage. Man. Well, I hope you enjoyed this topic today because I had a lot of fun putting it together, and the designing of it was very fun for me. I got to really, envision what a Subaru luxury brand would look like. I think Corey with the ice and the snowflake as the logo, like that just makes so much sense. And I think that Subaru as a brand, if they did that, it would be incredible. I think that it would match perfectly for them. Like just to show you an idea of what that logo may look like, I was envisioning something like this, like a snowflake on the front grille. There was a couple different renditions that I made of these cars. Like this was the original Corey, with the snowflake that I had come up with, maybe something like this with like a 6-point snowflake. So there's just a lot of different options I had, but I wanted to really give it a good go of a full lineup. I didn't want to just give one or two cars. I wanted to see. And honestly, the B11S was something I never knew existed. And I'm like so happy that I learned about that. And the history of the H6 engine and how many people were trying to modify it to make dual turbo versions of it, like it was just such a interesting, going through everything on it. It was very interesting to find that so many people were trying to put these engines together. So it was just like, let me see if I can do this real quick. There we go. So people were constantly modifying and testing and doing different things with these cars. They took these big H6 engines and they were just trying to dual turbo, and they were like, screw it, we're going to make a high performance car and push it to the limit, and this is what we're going to do. And I think that's
I think we mentioned it about the V12 or the flat 12 Subaru made. Sorry, V12, flat 12. Subaru made a flat 12. We'll have to have another episode about that.
Yeah. That I'm enjoying uncovering things about Subaru that I've never known, because after being around Subarus for 10 plus years, I feel like in some aspect, right, you've heard every little piece of what Subaru has done and what they haven't done and failed projects and stuff like that. And I feel like now that we're doing this podcast, I'm diving further in and I'm finding all of these hidden gems, and it's just making really interesting conversation. So, I love this. I think this is great. And maybe we can talk a little bit. You know what we'll do? We'll come back and we'll talk about the H12, and then we'll also talk about the H6 twin turbo setups, and we'll do an engine day. So cool. Well, thank you for being here again. Dave and I appreciate everyone who is watching at home. Like he said, like, comment, share. We're seeing the comments. We are responding. We are just honing this podcast to make it as good as it can possibly be. Just want to let everybody know that we are going to be, at least I will be at Boxer Fest this year. I am going to have a tent like we had last year. We'll have some free stuff to give away from all the sponsors that sponsor the group.
We're working on being there too.
Woo! Now that would be cool. So you guys might just get lucky, might just get both of us. I know Freddie Bruce from Induction Auto Works, he's normally there. We have a bunch of other sponsors that usually make it out. So, we really hope that you guys come out and hang with us, and we will catch you on the next episode. And Dave and I are out.